Well, it's Sunday, it's the first day of my challenge. Dan is having an early workout at the gym. I've just fed the cats, and for breakfast we're going to be having porridge. I got a kilo bag cheaply from the supermarket recently, so we're using literally 1 teacup, which is about 10 pence, along with some milk. It's horrible weather today, wet and windy. I think we had rain all night. We were expecting snow, but as usual, the weather forecast got it wrong. All we got was rain. There may have been a little bit of sleet last night mixed in with the rain, but Dan went out for a drive just to look at the sea, and he said it was just raining. So there we go. Arthur is a little bit temperamental this morning. It's not fit for him to go out and is a little bit at a loose end. It'll settle down though soon enough. They're all beautiful. Miss Robin's not bothered. She's quite happy on Mama's bed. She hasn't even come down for a breakfast yet. She eats as and when she pleases. Anyway, my boy is back in probably the next half hour, 40 minutes. So it's time to get the breakfast started. I always keep my dried goods in jars. These are good at keeping moths out. We sometimes get moths in the summer. I'm going to measure out a teacupful of these. The oats were really cheap from the supermarket. They represent about 15 pence. And I'm also going to start the litre of the Fen Farm Dairy raw milk. I will add those to my total spend so far, and I'll put how much this breakfast cost on the screen. My dad was Scottish and his porridge was to die for, and I make my porridge the same way, nice and slow on a very low heat, so it comes out nice and creamy. So let's away. These are the oats. I can be quite clumsy, so I found it easier just to spoon them into the cup. That's full. The oats go in the pan, along with about a dessert spoonful of chia seeds. Here's the raw milk. I'm going to add a cup of the raw milk and then 3 teacupfuls of water. Don't forget to add a pinch of salt. And now it's on a really low heat. I'm using the back of a wooden spoon to stir everything together. Now, I don't have a spartel. Spartel is a Scottish porridge stirrer. Of course, they were also popular in medieval times for the pottage, the potage. While the porridge is cooking slowly on the stove, and I'm keeping an eye on it, I am going to make the weekly loaf. I usually make all our own bread unless I'm really busy, and then I will just go to the baker's and get one. We're having a cuppa when Dan gets back, along with the porridge. This was my grandmother's teapot. It's vintage, made by Sadler of England. I also have the matching coffee pot, which I found from the Petticoat Lane Emporium, so I have a set. If anybody is interested to know, I am actually a collector of teapots and have a fair few. The next one I want to source is a barrel teapot, because I have quite a lot of barrelware which we use on a daily basis. Barrel was really popular during the 1940s and 50s and is often known as utility ware. For the bread, I'm going to tip in about 200 grams of strong white flour. This is French flour, and this worked out at about 80 pence for the bag, that's all. It is unbleached flour. You need to be quite precise in banking. So that's about 16 pence. I'm also going to add about 50 grams of this buckwheat flour. Now this was €4.38, which works out at today's exchange rate around £3.73. I'm only using 50 grams of this, which represents about 18 pence. I have a part open packet of dried yeast. I'm taking a teaspoon out of that. It's already opened. The yeast sachets are about 8 pence each, and I'm only using a third, so call it threepence. So the whole of this loaf will have cost me 37 pence, which is more nutritious and way cheaper than anything decent you can get from the supermarket. I'm using a separate spoon. Buckwheat is gluten-free. French flour is lower in gluten anyway because the type of wheat is different. But if I make something like buckwheat pancakes, I don't necessarily want any traces of wheat in it. And if I was making something for a strict gluten intolerant or celiac, mixing the two flours would be a definite no-no. Lactose and wheat intolerance runs in my family. So I want a level teaspoon of yeast. That goes one side, and then I add half a teaspoon of salt on the other side. And now I will add some lukewarm water and probably a drizzle of honey and a squeeze of lemon. This helps with the buckwheat. It can be quite dense. It's high in protein, so it keeps you fuller for a little bit longer. You don't need to eat huge quantities of this bread. This makes a small loaf, so if you were doubling the quantities for a large loaf, it would still cost you something like 74 pence, and it would keep you going for at least part of the week, depending on how many of you there were in your family. But it's quite filling, so it does go quite a long way. You don't need as much bread. There's about 150 millilitres of water in there, with a good drizzle of honey, maybe about a teaspoon or so eyeballed, and a squeeze of lemon. Flours can vary, so you may need more or less. I usually see where I am, and then if necessary, just add a little more. You can also add a drop of milk if you like, if you're not lactose intolerant. And if you're vegan, you could add a drop of, say, agave to the water and a little bit of almond milk. I just topped the cup up very slightly, and look, see, that's almost the perfect texture. So I'm going to now turn it out onto the board and knead it. Don't worry if the dough is slightly sticky. Once you start kneading it, it will improve. Just make sure you add plenty of flour to your hands and the board, and keep kneading until the dough ball is nice and smooth. This is ready now, so I'm going to put it in the bowl I made it in, which is coated with a little bit of olive oil, and then I'm going to put it in a warm place to prove for probably a couple of hours or so, covered with a clean tea towel. So did you have a nice time then at the gym, Dan?
Yes, I did. I had a great time. I was on the spin bike for about 3/4 of an hour.
Were you? Where did you go to today?
It was, I found another video of narrow gauge railway up in Wales.
Oh, right,
so
okay.
I did that one, bit of a change from the Piccadilly line.
Well, I hope you enjoy your porridge.
I will do. It looks very nice. Porridge is gorgeous.
You enjoying it?
Oh yes, yumbo jumbo.
Dan and I have come to the garden centre. It's such a rainy, wet, damp, miserable, windy day. It's good to get out of the house every day if you can and soak up some positive vibes. I always find the garden centre and being surrounded by plants and flowers quite uplifting, especially when the weather's not good or I'm at a loose end and don't have a huge amount of time to go for a walk. So I've found these in the pound basket. These are early, high yielding French garlic. It says plant in autumn, but we reckon we can get away with planting them in early spring, around February or March, maybe by early March, depending on what kind of weather we have this next couple of months. But we're really here for some membrane. The things in here, in this pound basket, these are the ones we've picked up. We've also got rhubarb as well. We've got this one in our garden. It's brilliant. It's so successful. We don't need another rhubarb crown though. We're rhubarbed out. We've now got 5 different crowns. 1 crown eventually became 5 crowns. We are looking for somebody to ask to find out where the membrane is. But look at all these gorgeous plants. Doesn't that instantly lift you up? 3 pansies and violas for £11 or $3.99 each. These are really nice. Look at these. Dianthus. Beautiful. Lovely spring flower. It says autumn bedding, but you can still plant them in early spring. As it says, they are a type of carnation. My mum really likes carnations and chrysanthemums. When my dad was on his deathbed, I could smell chrysanthemums, even though there were none in the room. So I knew that he was close to his end. But then I could see spirits standing at the foot of the bed, and I could see loved ones around him who'd already gone to spirit. They'd come to collect him, and by the following evening, an hour and a half before Father's Day, he passed into the spirit realm. This isn't said to make anybody feel depressed. We inhabit our bodies for what is really a short space of time in the bigger scheme of things, and then we are reborn in spirit once we've had our healing on the Blue Island, which William T. Stead spoke about at length. Oh look, this as well. This is anti-weed fabric. That's the stuff. How much is it?
£9.99 a roll.
Oh, that's good.
A bigger roll, which is this is anti-weed fabric, 15 square metres.
We'll take the bigger one.
Yeah.
The babies have had their lunch and they're relaxing. Dan and I are having our lunch. This is a homemade roll. It's made with Panda Campagna. It cost about 30 pence to make 6 of these. So that's 5 pence with a bit of leftover fish paste and some homemade soup, which we're not counting. So that's 5 pence each for lunch, 10p. This is the bread dough. This has had a good 2 to 3 hours. Look how lovely and light it is. I'm going to get that on the board, give it a very small knead, and then in the bread tin, and then I'll cover it over and give it another hour or 2 until it's nice and risen again. Dan's upstairs this afternoon finishing the decorating in our music room, which doubles up as a guest room, and I'm doing a little bit of meal prep. We're having a roast dinner tonight. I won't show you everything, except I will tell you that we get 12.5 kilo sacks of potatoes for £4.99, which is just under 40 pence a kilo, which is really cheap. And I've got about 250 grams of potatoes, which is about 10 pence. Those are the roasties. Dan's having some cooked chicken that I got on a yellow ticket for £1.20 with some gravy. I'm going to do a lovely cauliflower cheese as my main, but there'll be enough for Dan as well. I have some leftover stuffing as well from food we had on New Year's Eve. That doesn't count for anything. And we'll probably have some frozen peas, which again is probably 10 pence. And then I'm going to make up a little bit of cheese sauce. The extras I will again add to what I have spent at Farm Foods, and I'll put the amount they and the dinners cost on the screen. I'm going to peel these parsnips. These we got from the Good Shed last weekend. They're lovely roasted. There's slightly over 250 grams. I often find it easier to prep dinners a little bit in advance, because then I'm not racing around the kitchen like a blue bottle, especially as supper tends to come within an hour or 2 of me feeding the cats and giving Bobby's insulin. It's usually quite frantic by evening time, so sometimes I do like to do the prep, and especially on a Sunday as well, where I've got a bit of time. I like spending time in the kitchen, just pootling around and do things at my own pace. So I'm going to get those potatoes and parsnips on the stove, bubbling away for 2 or 3 minutes, just to parboil. It means that the cooking time in the oven is a little shorter and gives them a good chance of steaming off, drying thoroughly, so that when they come out of the oven, they're nice and crisp on the outside and fluffy on the inside, because we all like our taters that way, don't we, folks? And while they're parboiling, I will prep some sprouts. I got a big stalk of sprouts last weekend at the goods shed, and they cost £2.70 for a massive stalk. I'm using about 40 pence worth. I have here about 200 grams of frozen cauliflower. That's about 42 pence. I'm going to bung this in the microwave for a few minutes and then put it into the gratin dish and make up the lovely sauce. I'll put on the screen the cost of the raw milk that I use. I'm going to water it down a bit because I find full fat milk a bit too creamy for me, but I'm using bits of leftover cheese and that's not included in the cost of this meal. Of course, the cost of the cauliflower is already taken care of because it was part of my expenditure yesterday in farm foods, but I'm also costing out separately the cost of the meal. An additional cost, of course, will be for the raw milk because I didn't get that from farm foods. However, we use corn flour in this household and I'm going to be using a heaped dessert spoon, and because that's corn flour, that's not included in the cost. That's from the sauces and seasonings department, which is cost free. Give the taters and the parsnips a really good shake when you've drained them, because it helps them to crisp up as well in the oven. They're going to dry out now as well. They steam off beautifully when done this way. And with quite a bit of the prep done, it's now to spend an hour or two doing some work. Well, Dan's still upstairs wallpapering. It's after 5 o'clock. I've been busy working upstairs for the last 2 to 3 hours. I've finally managed to finish the long Arla update video. I've been busy video editing for most of the week actually. I've got quite a lot of content, so I'm busy churning that out. And I'm going to do a salad for Dan's pack up for tomorrow. Just a little salad. I like to prep his food either the afternoon or the evening before he actually needs it because it saves time. He often goes out in a hurry. So I'm going to do him a little salad. The bread, as proved, that'll soon be ready to go in. The parsnips and potatoes are all ready. They've got some olive oil mixed through them, and also there's a nice pat of my homemade sumac and chilli butter. I'm going to finish this old cucumber and these tomatoes that Dan's mum gave us. I'm going to use a little bit of this lettuce out of the salad selection pack. That probably represents about 20 pence or so. Dan's mum gave him this as well, so that's going out with him. So really his lunch tomorrow is an extra 20p because he's got some of my homemade soup as well that's in the freezer. Doesn't that look good? Gorgeous bread fresh out of the oven. Look at this. Yorkie, my main, and lovely roasties. Look at those. I'll start dishing up. I'm just waiting for the rest of the veg. Right, so I'm coming over now. That's your dinner, Dan.
Oh, yumbo jumbo.
And that's my dinner.
Mm.
And that lot wasn't expensive. I'll put up on the screen how much it actually came to. Beautiful celebration Sunday roast. And I'll see you tomorrow for day 2 of the challenge. So, evening all.